All right, well, the time is 2:33, so we've got very few people here, but a couple online, 15 online looks like, give or take some recordings and stuff. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Sorry, I'm gonna pull up the, hold on a second. Thank you. So the agenda was sent out, and is on the screen right now. If you are online, you could just make sure you do an introduction online, so we have your attendance, for those that are here in person. I think everybody, signed up. I guess I have a question on quorum, because we have very few people in person, so I don't know if we need to do a rundown online. Ellen.
Hey, Dominic, it's Helen. I actually didn't get the meeting poll or the invite, which is why I'm not in person. Sorry.
No, I just heard that when I walked in as well, so I apologize. I don't know what, I don't know what happened. We're gonna make sure that the roster from the past two meetings are on the invite group. But I was told the invite group is like a group of like 90 plus emails, so.
Yeah.
Are we looking like we have quorum for the sake of the meeting? Call the meeting order, but I don't know if I can. So I called the meeting order, but I don't know if I can. Do we have enough?
How many do we need again to have quorum?
You guys know how many we need for quorum?
I'm at the charter now to see, but I'm pretty sure everyone was.
We're pulling up the charter to confirm. The members we confirmed back in like, I think November,
Yeah, we have a
December.
roster. Let's pull it up.
And for this one, we don't need to be in person quorum first, right? I saw she shook her head no. I'm sorry, what'd you say, Dominique?
Hybrid and in-person counts towards quorum. We have 3 for quorum in here. You do not count towards your member. Shawnee, I don't think are you a member or? Are you on the roster?
I don't think Shawnee's.
I think you're an attendee, so. Yeah.
That's good.
So 3 in the room.
So we have 13, it looks like, from roster that I have. Yeah. So Kathleen, I don't think she's online, Sarah, Colette, Chuck, Clara.
Clara
Awesome.
counts, yes.
Damia,
Dana, yes.
Hi, I'm
David,
here.
Dominique, and Shawnee's is a member, Gary, April, and Arrow.
Okay,
No, Arrow, we know she's not here, but, so we need 7.
so we need 7 and we're at 3 in person, and I heard you say Clara, Dama, sorry, I can't see the full roster who's online. Sarah and Helen. So, okay, we do have quorum. All right.
Dana's not online, Danya is.
Okay, Danya does not count towards quorum.
I thought, this is Blossom. I thought I'm a member. I'm online.
Blossom is, so is Sarah.
You're good.
Is Coleman on that?
Oh, I thought I counted too. I don't.
Why is Mark going out on Thursday?
There's Copeland.
Sorry.
No, you're good. All right.
And Gary's there.
You don't tell me yet. I want to know.
All right, let's go ahead and
At 4:45 on Thursday.
get the
Oh,
meeting
this
order
is-
out.
This is Dania, so I don't count as quorum. Is that what you're saying?
I don't have is she on the member list?
She is. There's.
Oh,
okay.
I was just correcting the name. That's all, Danya.
The what?
Yeah, that's it.
I thought Dominique said Dama is online, and I said not Dama, Danya. It was just
Oh,
telling me who was online.
Oh, okay.
So
Oh, sorry.
quorum, the members were chosen back in, I believe it was November, and it was decided anyone who wanted to become an active member of the committee versus an attendee. But minimally, it was the chairs, the seats of the committee, and then also the subcommittee leads, and then anyone who expressed interest. So we did not have, we had you listed as a participant, not a member, but we can absolutely add that or change that. There's not an application process for this committee, honestly. So sorry for that confusion. But yeah, we want people to participate, but then if we have 30 people that are all participating and half of them show, then we get into the quorum issues. So we tried to establish a committee quorum in the fall. So, but we are good to proceed. The agenda is up on the screen and shared virtually. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, and Miss Clara is online. Are you able to unmute?
Yeah, if I can find the button.
All right, do you want to do the consent agenda?
Yeah, I think we just have the meetings from the last meeting is really all that needs to happen. So, was anyone able to review them? Is there any concerns or anything that needs to be changed about them, or are they all good?
Is anyone able to review the January meeting minutes or have any feedback?
And those were sent out at the initial meeting invite. Just making sure
Yeah.
everyone knows.
Yeah, they were sent out a while ago, so I understand if nobody's looked at them recently.
Hey, it's Sarah. I've read through them. I didn't see anything glaringly obvious that needed to be changed or crazy. Do we need to make a motion to approve them? Remind me.
Yes.
Okay. Hey, it's Sarah. I move we approve these meeting minutes.
A second. Gary, was that? Me seconded, so all in favor? Any opposed? Abstain? Okay, thank you. All right, there we go. So we're gonna kind of get into a high level overview of how everything went from this past season. We're gonna hear from HLA, a few staff, but honestly, I pulled this quote from another community's point in time, but I found that there's another one later on, but I just found it pretty powerful. One of my most favorite things about the point in time is such a unique way to experience the city that I love. And the person that posted it, it was like they do it at 3 a.m. And so, like community volunteers at 3 a.m. And so I just thought, like, to have that perspective, I wouldn't think of that. I think of like, for me, it's going through the motions now of like, get in, get out, get a survey done, right? And come back. But to have that experience, whether it be in the woods, in an encampment, in a park, it's a different perspective, like Williams Park, local Topia this past weekend, versus homeless surveys, like it's a completely different experience. So, just kind of bringing that personhood back into it. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started with our summary. So, TB, I'll let you take it away. How it went?
Thank you. So, hi everyone online and everyone here. It was my first year as program manager for Pitt, as you all know, so it was an interesting experience for me to be still on the back end of it, but doing a lot more for the program. And it was intense to see all of the other parts that I didn't know about that went into it. But it's definitely a community effort, and I'm so grateful for all of these subcommittees that stepped up this season. I know we had youth this year, which my first time as program manager and one of our first years having youth back. So I'm really grateful to Chuck and Taylor and everyone that contributed to that effort. We hit some snags on the morning of Pitt due to the training that occurred 2 days before. And that was on the back end, of course, like approving profiles and stuff like that, which I think was a very good learning process for me. Otherwise, I feel like most of the deployment sites found the team lead record keeper pretty successful this year, which last year we implemented the check-in, check-out process through our dashboard. So the technical assistance on site was doing that, and it got pretty hectic, but this year it went a lot better. And of course, there'll be room for improvement for next year, but I had some numbers. I know Tony's gonna go over more, so I guess I might leave this for him to mention, but one thing that I did take away largely from the data that I got to review before was that we had 478 volunteer registrations, and then deduplicated, it was 449. So we had 449 registered volunteers, but we only had 231 check-in on the day of Pitt. So I know we have some data from past years saying if they got trained too early, they didn't go up on the day of Pitt. We definitely had training just a week or so before Pitt this year, so I don't think that contributes to our reduction in volunteers showing up, but definitely something to look at in order to make sure we have more volunteers next year. Because I know we saw the registration numbers and we got excited, knowing that not that many would show up on the day of Pitt, but it was a pretty significant drop in terms of having 231 show up and almost 500 registered. So that was significant to me and something I want to look at for next year. I think we'll go into more details later. I don't know if we want to talk about like the incentive feedback we got.
All of that. Wait, may I ask a question real quick? Do you know how many were actually trained? Because it was registered volunteers was 449 versus how many received training?
I don't have that number, but I can work on it.
Because that's what I'm wondering is how many like no-showed, because we did have some no-shows. I know there was some different community, we had people showing up at our site in St. Pete. That were pulling out their emails to show me, I didn't read people's emails, but they were pulling out their emails to show me that they were at my site, but they weren't on my list. Or people that didn't show at all, I'm wondering, did they show up at another site or did they not show at all? But yeah, there's always more that commit to doing it than who actually get trained in before.
Yeah. I did have a few on the day of Pitt reach out to me and say they wouldn't be able to make it for XYZ, but I wouldn't say no more, definitely not 250. So it'll be interesting. I'll look at the number of those that were trained. The incentive feedback was also significant. And we had cold night shelters activate the night before, which we all know. And one of the sites in Clearwater specifically, there was feedback that they preferred the bus pass to the Winn-Dixie gift card. So that is something that was interesting because we had feedback from last season saying that bus passes were not as valuable. I don't know if law enforcement has any feedback because you all had some of the bus passes. Were people happy? Were they not happy?
We had a lot of happiness with the bus passes.
Okay, great.
Yeah. There was a few that wanted the Winn-Dixie card, but they found out they couldn't buy alcohol or cigarettes. They didn't want them. Yeah. Let's be honest.
I know St. Pete, I don't think Phil Pony's online, but he was pretty clear that his team preferred bus passes as well, and that's in the city that essentially has free bus. So
I know I am trying to raise my hand, but I can't figure out, so I apologize for interrupting. But for us, we noticed that the a lot of people, the Winn-Dixie cards were too far away from Clearwater, so they would have to. A lot of them said they didn't want it because it was just too far for them to get there. And some of them did say, well, do you at least have a fast pass? And we're like, no, sorry, just the Winn-Dixie card.
Thank you. Yeah, there was some feedback on volunteer surveys with that too.
Mhm.
I think just reiterating.
The other thing I've heard is, really trying to find meal cards, like, I would think a Chick-fil-A does them, which obviously Chick-fil-A's aren't everywhere either, but, it's like a free sandwich, it's not a $5 at McDonald's or Chick-fil-A, because those won't go far. But like, here's a value meal, or if that's an option, I don't know how that works, because most of those I think are just like giveaways.
Also,
Does Publix refuse to help, or it's hard to get to the right people?
So they're purchasing those gift cards at value, the Winn-Dixie offers a discount though, I don't know what the actual discount is, so they aren't paying $5 per gift card, which is essentially, I think, why we went with them 2 years in a row. And they were easy to order.
Easy to order is a huge factor because yeah, when you go when you go places to get the gift cards, a lot of time they do it individually at a lot of places like Walmart. That's an issue. But the other Publix is one that definitely would be more prominent throughout the entire area. Want to go back though to like looking at food cards for different restaurants or having different types of incentives available at one time. Some feedback that's been received has been the concern around sitting there with which one would you like? Take and just having like a smorgasbord and the time that may take up and any inequitable features that may involve as well. Just being mindful of that too.
Harry,
Seeing as how many no-shows we had, does anybody have any projection about how this actually affects our overall numbers? Because people not showing, surveys not given, that will diminish our the effectiveness and the purity of the data. Anybody ever projected that, or is that gonna be a big issue?
I think that maybe Tony may be able to speak like anecdotally on that, but I'll speak anecdotally first, because at St. Pete, we were still able to send everyone to all the sites. So we didn't not deploy to a location, we just augmented the teams, if that makes sense. So
I know that's what we use when we go for, funding
Absolutely.
requests and such, and that
absolutely.
was my concern.
We did see less volunteers at HEP. That was one of the issues that I had doing assignments this year, was that everyone wanted to be at Boley. And when the initial assignments went out to accommodate the HEP deployments, most people were saying they're either unavailable or just not gonna go to North County to deploy. So that led to kind of some friction with assignments. I feel like more people just wanting to show up at Boley, even if there wasn't technically a need. I mean, the more volunteers, the better, but it can also make it messy at the site. So HEP definitely had lacking volunteers and they needed more to be deployed all around. I know there was some concerns there in the morning too. But I will say that the numbers this year for pit encounters was higher by 30 than last year. So it looks like in 2025 pit, there were 1,114 total encounters. And then this year we had 1,144. So a total of 30 more, which I'm sure cold night shelters contributed to that, luckily. But that's a very good question about our reach.
Okay, so it's definitely under 1,200 this year.
Yes, encounters, and so I'm sure Tony will hammer this point home when we get to the data review, is these are unreviewed. They are not duplicated, they could be staying at Safe Harbor and also receive this survey, they could be housed and also receive this survey, so there's a lot of analysis that comes in over the next couple months. So last year's numbers went from 1,100-ish to, was it 560 something? It almost reduced in half based off the deduplication and the filtering and screen cleaning that they do. So I don't know, Tony, when we get to data, if you have any more detail on that, it would be very much appreciated.
It'll take months to crunch all that.
Correct, yeah. And they check them all again to see like, did they spend the night in shelter? Because we definitely don't want to duplicate, if Pinellas CoC, they're gonna count Pinellas CoC and as unsheltered for that night. Let's see. So one thing that I was thinking about, Hillsborough does it very different than we do as far as how people redeployment, and how that assignment works. And basically people are signing more for their deployment location. And so if it gets full, it gets full and isn't an option to sign up and register for anymore. And so I don't know how effective that's been in Hillsborough. I know Sarah's on here. I think she's on their committee still. But maybe that's an after action we can connect with them on to see how they do it differently.
Hey,
Yeah,
Dominique.
here, yes, we can do
I'm
that.
sorry.
I actually took some of the things that we've been doing here in Pinellas to them this morning in the committee meeting because we were having a discussion around cold weather shelters and what that might look like for Hillsborough County. It's a very different look and action item for a couple of reasons. Number one, because we're already under special dispensation with HUD to do it, in February instead of January because of Gasparilla, and then having to do some other finagling, for lack of a better word, for scheduling and things because the shifts are also very different for Hillsborough. So we don't start as early in the morning in Hillsborough County as we do in Pinellas County. And since most of the cold weather shelters start exit at 6 a.m., that becomes a thing. So there's some plan B's, C's, and D's to try to figure that all out. We're hoping that the weather can maybe cooperate for next week when they do theirs. But yeah, we can certainly connect, and I can get you with the chair and the liaison from THHI, which is the lead agency for Hillsborough, to do some compare and contrast if you'd like.
Hillsborough? Oh, so it's Thursday. Okay, so there's this next Thursday. So Monday night's looking a little chilly. I was curious. Helen, did you have something else to say?
I was gonna go back to, well, now Sarah has piqued my interest, but I was gonna go back to the registered versus deployed versus how many were actually trained. We know that there were some snafus this year with who was trained, who wasn't trained, and so just as a something that we need to look at is that a lot of people on my team came back to me and said, "Hey, I was trained, but I was told that I wasn't trained." Went back and forth. They were waiting for an answer, didn't get that answer. So not neither here nor there. Just ended up that they didn't volunteer because of that. And these were first time people, so they didn't know to say, "Helen, hey, this is an issue for me," or just to show up because they had already been trained. We had a lot of first time people sign up this year, which is really good on our end. However, they didn't get to go through the experience. So I'm not overall sure how we keep the list. I know this was your first time TV, so I know there was a lot of moving parts here, and that's okay. We got it done. But if there's a way for us to figure out who was trained, and thank all for just the fact that they got trained, or something, that we need to do something so that we can continue to engage those who this was their first time and it didn't work out well for them. Right. So I've had the conversation with the ones who knew to come to me, but there are some that are new to the city that did not know to come to me, that they just got an email from me. They don't realize that I send this email out every year. And that we could have gotten them trained internally or any of those things. And so I would ask then, I guess, overall, if there's a way to figure out for my team specifically. I mean, I'm sure everybody would appreciate that, maybe or maybe not, but for my team specifically, who all at least even registered, then I could get with them and figure out, what happened. I know some people dropped out because they couldn't for whatever reason. But I did have quite a few that told me that their training, there was just a question about their training that didn't get answered.
Thank you, Helen. I put a note in my list so I can reach out to you with your registered and your trained staff if they marked City of St. Pete or use the City of St. Pete email at least.
Okay, perfect. And I think if you send me the list, I should be able to figure out name wise most times, because I do know like some people, even mine didn't show up City of St. Petersburg, and I don't know why, because I know I put City of St. Petersburg, but mine I don't think showed up. It showed up my City of St. Pete email, but it didn't show up like my employer as City of St. Petersburg. So if I think I have the one list that the last list that was shared with me, but I'm not sure if that was the full one. And then I'm sorry, go ahead.
Helpful for me is as well, because I do the recruitment from Pinellas is so are you asking for the final? I would like the final deployed, like these are the people that were actually checked in. Right, and then you're also asking for those who were trained, or I don't know how you guys
Registered, I guess, and deployed, maybe. Well, I guess do you keep all three, like registered, trained, deployed?
One spreadsheet, is it on one sheet?
It might be. So the training details are going to be confusing this year due to the approvals that we did the morning of PIT to get the law enforcement officers in. A lot of people that attended training never registered for PIT. So they went to the training, they didn't have access to the survey, but they participated in a training. And then I had to follow up with them to make sure that they registered for PIT so they could then get access to the survey and then submit their test survey. And some of those folks didn't get it done in time to be assigned. I'm not saying it was City of St. Pete, but this is most of the volunteers that had a pause in their process. So they were basically put in limbo. And then the morning of PIT, all of those people got approved in order to mass approve law enforcement officers that actually needed to be approved, if that makes sense to you. I can connect with you.
It does actually. I think that was a light bulb. So thank you, because I didn't realize that people had the ability to register for training and not be registered for PIT.
Yeah, so it's not even the register for training. A lot of last minute people wanting to volunteer would either email, or their supervisor or colleague would email and say, can they get trained? They still want to volunteer. And of course, in an effort to include everybody, I would just send the links to the training so they could do that. And then I sent a document, which I feel like most people on the committee have seen now, with the steps to troubleshoot through the app, just to make sure they registered first, had an account for PIT, and they registered for PIT. And then they had access to the survey before they attended the training. And that's the same document that has the QR code and everything to access the survey faster. So that was to try and get all the last minute folks in, but yeah, the goal was to get them registered first and then do a training. But anyone that reached out towards the end that wanted to be trained, I went ahead and sent them the link to make sure we could get as many as possible. Because the registration and having access to the survey, it just takes a few seconds if they do it, but yeah, next year, I think I would prefer to just cut off registration entirely at a specific deadline, move on to training, cut that off at a specific deadline. I know there were 2 or 3 last minute trainings done this year, so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the one who definitely pushed for the makeup, like having that standby makeup on schedule,
Yeah.
which we did end up using again. So I think that, I feel like that was really helpful for the training. I think one of the confusions I saw, and I did talk to the HLA about this already, was that I think the training email got sent out to the HLA distribution list, not those who had registered. And that was part of the confusion. So people who were registered as volunteers, and historically it was the volunteer registration group that got, hey, you are registered as a volunteer, now go register for training. And this time, I think it was the full distribution list. So then people were like, oh, I'm registered, but they were registered for a training series. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's just one thing that I observed, and I've already given that feedback, but it may be helpful for the rest of the group as well. Sarah, your comment, or sorry, was there anything else? Blossom, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, just to Helen. Helen, we usually have like probably about the same amount of volunteers as you guys have for the city of St. Pete at VA. So for several years now, for what it's worth, this may be helpful. I have done like my own training to just VA, and we had the same thing. A lot of people saying not getting an assignment, and the reason was saying that they weren't trained when in fact they were. But it has been helpful to have just a VA training, because then I can track. Dominique would send me lists, and TV was sending me lists. Okay, these are your people that have registered, and I was just setting up like my own training with however many it was, 20 something or whatever, and then I could track who took it, and then they knew to come to me. So I don't know. Since you guys do get so many volunteers, Helen, that might be helpful if April trained or you trained just your little group. And then
We were willing to do that. We just couldn't get through who actually registered, but now it sounds like the people that came to me actually were registered for Pitt and they had done the training. And April was able to go through the teams thing and see that they actually were on the training. So she was able to give me like, hey, Helen, this person's emailing me, but or the list that TV sent out of people that weren't trained. Yes, these people did take the training because they actually signed in on the team's training. So, and that's what we were ultimately trying to get to, Blossom. So I agree with you that, I mean, with 40 people, we could do that easily, set that up as a training. That's what we were trying to get to. But a lot of our people said they had already had the training, but they were told that they didn't have the training.
same.
And since they were first time, they were just like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I'm waiting for an answer back. But when TV's getting 50 emails from people saying, hey, I don't know what to do, I can understand how that gets bogged down. So we could have done our own internal training. And so I guess that is something that I can take back. But what I hear TV saying is that she would prefer the trainings to be at a set time and after that date, no more, so that there isn't confusion. So we'll have to figure that out on our end.
Okay, yeah, and we can go with whatever next year too. But so yeah, either way. And I agree, Dominique. I actually did the makeup training, the hidden makeup training, and it was pretty well attended. Maybe there's a firm cutoff. And if people are saying, hey, I want to help after the fact, it's saying, okay, but the only shift we have great need is the 6 a.m., for example, and just maybe only keeping it open to those that can fill in where the greatest need is, not just anywhere. Maybe that would reduce confusion or amount of people.
All right, I wanted to circle back on something Sarah had said with Hillsborough's point in time happening next week. It reminded me of what we were able to pivot our early morning people for point in time at the cold night shelters. And so I just wanted to give an overview of that process. I think it went pretty well, but I would love to hear y'all's feedback. So what we did is we looked at the 6 a.m. shift and said, who do we know that could potentially pivot and just come a little bit earlier? So instead of arriving and deploying from a site at 6 a.m., they arrived at the shelter at 5:15, 5:30. And then we also recruited law enforcement to help fill some of the gaps for some of those sites as well. I've heard positive things on how that went, but I didn't know what you all thought, if there's any feedback. And I'm gonna put Helen on the spot because I know you're one of the ones I pivoted, so.
I think it went great, actually. Everybody on my team is someone that normally would have done that early morning shift. I think April and Shanice helped me remember if Jake was an early morning person, but anyway, being at Cold Night Shelter, I think it worked great. Everybody was already getting up. We did wake up a few people, which I think for some people might have felt a little uncomfortable, but we were at Allendale, and I think what helped us is that some of the people who were working, some of the volunteers working Cold Night Shelter were able to go gently kind of nudge everybody a little bit, say, hey, they're here, this is what they're for. So here for. So I think if given the opportunity again, I would recommend that we do it the same way, that we pivot for cold night shelter. It would be a missed opportunity if we didn't do that.
And I think, some sites like Pinellas Park, Boys and Girls Club, I've always heard they have a hard cutoff, they have a hard stop at 6, but some places we're allowing people to kind of linger for a little while after the official close time. So I don't know if that's part of this, the waking up or part of that, because my understanding was, I don't know if Jody's online and you were talking about this, Copeland, the Boys and Girls Club, they actually had a table like ready for you guys to come in and like, come sit down, they're ready for you. And same thing over at the Methodist Church in Pinellas Park. You've been telling people all night about it, so they knew exactly who was showing up and what they were doing there.
He'd already spoken 2 or 3 occasions,
Yeah.
they were primed and ready,
Yeah.
lined them up.
That was very helpful. Sherry, sorry, I see your hand raised.
No, yeah, 2 things really quickly. Cold Night Shelter, of course, was awesome. Good timing on activation for that night leading into Pitt. And because I think that part of the experience for when I went out, I spoke to many, many people, and every single one except for one person said, I was already surveyed at a cold night shelter site. So that was really good. That kind of helps with that capturing everyone that we can. The other thing is that since it is the end of January when we held Pitt, that we have a contingency plan in preparation for, let's say a cold night shelter is activated the night before. What's the plan for transitioning some over and making sure that sites are kind of given a heads up, and we can reach out to them in advance to say, if this happens, what do you need? Like, because I know that there was a lot of outreach the day before to say, we have Pitt at the same time, so we will try not to interfere with your operations. Just making sure that we maintain good partnerships. I haven't heard any issues from that but there was some outreach done to ensure that we weren't going to like step on toes or keep people longer from doing their regular business operations.
They also notified sites of who kind of was their point person, so that they had each other's contact. I don't know if anyone utilized that. But I'll say like Tarpon, that was Tarpon law enforcement, because Dream Center just doesn't deploy at that time. So they already were connected to St. Tim's and with the shelter manager and already had that connection. But then we also had to move some teams around too, based off some of that feedback. So
We used it on our end, Dominique, at Allendale, and it worked perfectly. Them knowing exactly they knew who I was before I showed up. It was perfect. It was fine on our end.
okay. All right, so let's keep moving through this. Anything else on the summary for UTV before you get into some of these?
No, I think going through these
Okay.
graphs would be good.
And we're gonna go into all those subcommittees too, where we'll get through some more of this. So that's good.
Thank you, Alicia. So training effectiveness, we only got 19 responses from volunteers. The email only went out last week, so maybe that wasn't enough time for folks to see and respond, especially with our holiday weekend. But with that data, it's trending positive. The numbers don't mean as much as what people actually said in their responses. So we had a few, because I think this year there were a lot, I don't know if it's a lot more, but there were a lot of first-time Pitt participants. And we had a few say that they would have liked some more training focused on how to actually approach the participants and kind of break the ice, and then transition into the survey. So I know, like Dominique was saying, in our trainings and for us that have participated year after year, we kind of gloss over certain things and we don't really respect the fact that as a new volunteer, uneasy with breaking the ice with strangers, people in this community, they don't have like trauma-informed care training, nothing like that. We should put a little more emphasis on the actual experience of a volunteer. When they show up to a deployment site, it's gonna be a little hectic. You're gonna have 2 folks that you can sign in with. You're gonna be assigned to a team of most likely strangers, nice people you wanna stay in contact with, don't leave each other. And then kind of go into how they would break the ice with an actual participant in the survey. So one of them specifically said, suggestion was made to include in training a bit more about approaching someone. And then someone did suggest bringing out the yellow books, like the resource guides, but of course, that's just a lot to carry. So training effectiveness overall was good, and of course, we have the feedback for scheduling like we saw this year. Hopefully, we can do it better next year to make sure all trained volunteers have the opportunity to get assigned if there's available shifts.
Sorry, I had to step out, school call. Question, feedback actually that I got on that was, yeah, people want more and people want less. So my thought was they want like longer, more detailed training, and some of them want less training, right? If there's like a 101 or like a more in-depth, or I've also heard first-time users need to be in person. Like I've heard all of these different ideas, and so I don't know if we deal with that when we reconvene, but how can we kind of adjust and modify trainings? Because some people do this work every day and a lot of people don't. And especially if you don't point in time over and over again, it just kind of becomes habit.
Being this is Danya, from what you were saying, I think it would be good to help us. I had a hard time trying to figure out if someone was homeless or not. And I didn't want to offend somebody who wasn't homeless by approaching them. So maybe ways to address that, because it was a little uncomfortable. And I wasn't the only one in my group, because we're like, are they homeless? Are they not homeless? I mean, I don't want to offend them. I don't just want, you know what I mean? So it's kind of that thing going on as well.
Thank you, that's a good point, and I remember feeling that way when I volunteered for the first time as well. And I think I went off script a little bit and said something like, we're doing a survey for anyone that may have experienced like or be unhoused, and then say like, are you interested in participating? To kind of hint at what we're looking for, without being offensive, but maybe we could incorporate that into trainings more officially, even though it's not technically in the script of the survey.
And that's maybe the recommendation too, is changing the script, because what I think what I do in my training is we're doing a housing survey on where you slept last night, but obviously if they were housed, their survey ends immediately. So you're kind of always inferring or assuming whether that person is housed or not. And I heard PSTA, there was a group that did Grand Central, and they were getting a lot of unhoused. But they were trying to make the survey available for anybody that wanted to take it. Sarah, is your hand raised?
Yeah, I was just gonna say something that's worked for me in the past, and this is how I did the training that I participated in this year as well, was similar to what you said, Dominique. I don't broach the subject really of homelessness. It's more, hi, we're out here volunteering with the HLA, and we're looking to discuss housing and how it affects the residents of Pinellas County today. Is that something you'd want to participate in? And then we ask where they slept last night, and if they're like, in my warm bed and I'm doing super, I go, thank you so much, friend. And then we kind of move on. And then people, I think, afterwards are like, oh, are you trying to look to see if people are homeless? And then it might broach the subject of like, yes, that's, in particular what we're looking for, but we're talking to anybody and everybody that we approach on the streets to make it more of a comfortable, less stigmatized conversation. It's worked really pretty well for me, at least. Victoria actually is one of those people who we had this discussion years and years in a row about what that looked like and how to sort of destigmatize the conversation and to, in Danya's words, not be like the uncomfortable, awkward kid in the corner who's like, hey, are you homeless? Are you not? I don't know. That's offensive. Because I'm sure for a lot of people, if you walked up to me on the street and were like, hey, friend, you homeless? I'd be like, do I look homeless? That's a whole fun conversation, right? So, and listen, it's happened to me in the past. I've done a lot of pits over a lot of counties. And so I've seen a whole lot of fun, awkward conversations happen. But for me in the past, that's what's worked really well is just to not even really approach it, just to say, we're looking at what housing means to people in this county and how people are affected. And it, in the current climate that our world is experiencing, um, it's not as weird for people to be down on their luck or to be experiencing a hard time, as it were, which can obviously directly lead to homelessness or couch surfing or doubling up, those kind of things. And in most people's eyes, that's what homelessness is. And so it becomes less of a stigmatized conversation if we just include everybody. But that's just my 2 cents. It's worked for me and for the groups that I've trained in the past.
Thank you, Sarah.
Any other training questions?
Do we get the satisfaction survey feedback for training?
That's what that is. Oh, not that. No, not that. I didn't look at that. I can look at that while we're going on to the next ones. Check-in experience at deployment center. Sorry, is this it? No, the last one is fine. Good, thank you. So again, 19 respondents, and just to give some information on the fair and very poor, it looks like HEP, the morning shift at HEP, which we did get feedback from TAs and site managers too, that was like probably the craziest deployment time and site. They're also a larger site, I guess, not, they're supposed to be larger, but they didn't have as many volunteers. But the morning shift had a lot of confusion. I think it was 3 different parts. One was all of the approvals that we had to do on the back end that morning. Might have confused some people about their shifts because they were automatically getting emails from the system once we approved them about an assignment. And then another one, I think, was that the team lead record keepers were meant to be given to the team leads for them to fill out when they get their assignment. And these were pre-filled out, so then when volunteers did show up or did not show up or did not want to be on a team with someone else or wanted to be teamed with their colleague or friend, that created a little more confusion and delay. So we'll try not to fill those out next year. And then I think some volunteers from the VA event were either coming to that shift or they didn't show up to that shift, and then I think sent a colleague instead. Added a little bit to the confusion there, but we had lots of good feedback from the other deployment sites. I know Boley is huge too, and you all did pretty well throughout your day, I think.
Yeah, I think we messed up the record keeping thing, to be honest. Damon and I did not understand what we were supposed to do with that sheet. So the way we did it in St. Pete is we actually forgot, we didn't do it for the 6 a.m. shift. That's when we realized, oops, we forgot the sheet. And we did it, but when they came back, we had them fill out the sheet. But what we did is we gave it to the team lead as like a cover sheet and said, write your team on here. We don't like to pre-assign teams. I think Largo pre-assigns them, and I want to hear how that went, Arrow. We don't like to pre-assign because again, you don't know who's gonna no-show, and especially if a lead no-shows, like you gotta pivot the team. And allowing them that preference of, hey, this is my friend, we want to be together. So we try not to get into, we give them the lead, hey, the lead, here's your sheet. You need to fill out all your team members that are on this sheet once you guys huddle up. And I think it goes pretty well in St. Pete, but again, I've been doing it from my perspective, I've been doing it for a while, so. Arrow.
Can I say something? I can't find the raise hand button. I'm so sorry. But I worked the Clearwater site that morning, and that morning was a little more confusing than the afternoon. The morning site, I did complete all the cards because the teams were completely assigned. So it was confusing because people were coming to work together and they were already assigned to a team. So in the afternoon, we just gave the packet to the lead and then the teams picked themselves. I think that was better than doing the assigned teams because we did do it both ways that day. And we were switching up. People were asking, I want to work with my friend. I don't want to. Yeah, and I understand that. So it does make sense to give the lead the packet and let the team join the lead.
And real quick, we also say like, hey, this is more of a walking one and this is more of a driving one because everybody's, got different preferences for that as well.
And then from my area where I went, and I'm sure something must have happened because they got backed up and there was a lot of waiting. So there were some people that were agitated because we had to wait 45 minutes before we even got to get started. So it was like we arrived at our 10 o'clock slot, but we weren't really going out. I want to say it was like 45 minutes or more before we could get out.
You mind me asking what site was that at?
It was the one in Clearwater, the HEP Center.
Was that 9:30 or feedback you got already?
And before Arrow you share, I did want to give feedback. I got lots of good feedback from Arrow specifically as a site manager too. And Hala was doing TA for the first time this year at that site. And she really appreciated your support and leadership. So yeah, if you could tell us how you do what you do there, maybe we can take some notes. Are you? Yeah. Oh, she's not on. Oh yeah.
She's
well,
not. She's out for the week.
We were just, I thought Arrow was on.
When Dominique said Arrow,
I can't see everybody, sorry, I just see 15 and I just need 10 names, so sorry about that, all right. She's very meticulous though, so I bet she was very detail oriented.
And I think Largo is the smallest, not including
Correct.
Florida Dream Center and the youth sites, so just keeping in mind that the smaller sites, of course, can be easier to manage, but still great feedback there. So deployment, okay, you can go to the next one. Anything else on deployment before we go? Thank you. This was the feedback on communication. Generally good. We had a couple fair and poor. I didn't get any specific feedback in terms of text on this. It was just the numbers, so I don't have specific feedback in regards to what they felt was fair or poor. Did anyone else have comments on communication this year, aside from those emails that went out the morning of deployment, which we will definitely not have happen next year? Thank you. And then next we had the ArcGIS survey 1, 2, 3 feedback. And then again, generally positive. I think someone said that they had a snafu and then they think it was user error. So all in all, good feedback there.
And actually, Helen, if you could look at the list and figure out who y'all's ArcGIS person is. She was deployed to St. Pete. I met her. She really liked the tool, which I was like, well, thank you for that feedback, because I find it a little challenging. But I was gonna see about maybe connecting her with DAPO and HLA for next year. For survey development or something like that.
And then
Our GIS person was volunteered as well.
Yes, someone from St. Pete's ArcGIS. Or survey, yeah.
I don't have a slide on this feedback, but in regards to the survey and assignments and all that, there was a comment saying that there was uneven coverage across shifts, which is true. Most people wanted to be at Foley. HEP just was severely neglected. Even when we tried to assign up there, there was kind of pushback on the volunteers. So of course, we're not gonna force anyone to go there. We couldn't anyway. The other thing was a lack of team leads this year. And I know there was feedback in regards to people being assigned as a team lead and not knowing they were team lead. So that's something that the committee can look at next year to see what we want to do about that. If we just don't have enough team leads, are we going to reduce deployment zones, or how we want to address that next year? Any comments on that?
Hey TV, it's Sarah. When you say that people didn't know they were team leads, does that mean that when you guys, like when they were registered, you assigned them? Because you had to like pick that, did you not?
Yeah, you mark whether you've been a team lead before.
Okay. And then did that automatically make people team leads?
No, but when I look at that, it definitely brings to my attention that you've been a team lead before, so I definitely want to make you a team lead again. And
Right.
then we didn't have enough team leads for the deployment zones and sites. Then people that marked that this was not their first time participating in PIT may have been assigned as a team lead. Usually if they had some kind of affiliation that marked to me that they maybe have experience in our field. But and there was, I mean, 231 volunteers and not enough to be assigned at HEP and then not enough to be assigned as team leads.
Okay. I guess part of my thought process and or recommendation for future would be that because there are some folks who maybe have participated in the past or who have been a team lead in the past and it was not their favorite assignment for whatever reason. And then, do not have that interest. So if it were me and I walked in that room and they were like, congratulations, team lead, and I wholeheartedly was not on board, you'd probably know. So I think that might be, the case with some of our friends and volunteers. So it might be beneficial to have sort of a three-pronged question for that. Like, have you been a team lead? Have you had experience? And then are you interested in future um, experiences as a team lead type of a situation? And then if they do need to be assigned a team lead, them getting some sort of notification, i.e. an email or I guess an email probably is the best way to say, hey, we've identified that we do not have enough team leads available in our number of trained volunteers. Would you be willing to step in? I know that like I went out for 2 deployments this year, and in my second one, we were short leads, and so I just did it because that was fine with me. But I'm gregarious and comfortable in that setting, but not everybody is. So maybe I don't know, following up with additional questions might be a good idea, or at the very least, hey, we have this need, can you help fill it? To see if people are willing to do it.
It's kind of similar. So I did that when I, my previous role many years ago. I helped with the assignments. And so just like I did we pivoted the early morning people, I looked at who all was there and said, who of this group should be a lead? And then we made like a direct contact. Like we need to bring the lead. Are you able to do that? Please. And then waiting for the feedback. Cause some people were brand new first time reporting to me that, oh, wait, no, this is my first time. What are you talking about? And I'm like, it's okay, don't worry about it, because I knew you were behind them in line and I could promote you to team lead. So kind of knowing the audience and stuff like that too.
That's true. And yeah, so maybe that personal one-on-one, and I think people are less likely to say no when they're approached personally too, like with that follow-up question, email, contact of some sort, phone call, text message, whatever, but to say, hey, we have this need, can you help us? Especially those of us who are working in this field, they're a lot less likely to turn that away rather than like the surprise, hey, this is your role for today, and they weren't expecting it. It just might go over better. Volunteering instead of voluntelling.
Thank you. And then the last bit from survey feedback text was to have clear visual identifiers. They said t-shirts or signage so that participants could better identify volunteers. I'm guessing the lanyards maybe weren't enough for what they thought. But we know t-shirts weren't in the budget anymore, so I don't know if we want to have bigger signs, maybe like the size of marathon runners on our shirts or something. Sound boards. Something we could consider. And that's it for the feedback summary. I'm working on the training feedback. I have the numbers. So we had 177 say, yes, the training was helpful. 7 said somewhat, and 3 said no, it was not helpful. Someone specifically said that the training on the app was frustratingly rapid. They could not keep up, so they were lost. Then when they tried to go into the app themselves later, they had the wrong password and they couldn't reset and all of that. We usually have like the Q&A private time after, which I had 2 sessions of that. If anybody wanted to get one-on-one help, which a few people took advantage of. I don't know if we have other options for people, maybe just like another 20 minutes stay on after each training session for trainers to specifically address people that want extra help in that moment. I feel like most of us did stay on after the training.
Yeah, I think we naturally did it, but
Yeah.
the program did, so
So-
maybe that's it, like kind of level setting that we will stay on.
Yeah, maybe like add a slide that says, we will be here for the next 20 minutes or something. All the trainings I was
I
in,
stayed after.
Yeah.
Too, so.
I said that each time, if you want to stay on for extra assistance. But those are the numbers.
Thank you for that. All right, we're gonna get into, that's it, I think the last one for you, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna get into the subcommittee reviews, and a lot of this is kind of repeating some of what we've already summarized, so just kind of be mindful of that for your reviews. I did ask all the subcommittee leads to kind of give a report out, so I'm survey, so I'll go first. Overall, I've heard positive things as far as the survey questions. We'll see how they analyze. We did catch one kind of doesn't know, refuse not to answer. We caught one of those that had been missing for, I guess, a year or two on a question, like the week before point in time. So we were able to update that. Really no impact to most people, probably didn't even notice it because it hadn't been noticed last year, this year at least. I did get feedback the week of as well that the Spanish translation was a little bit too like textbook. It wasn't, they were saying like it's a English, it was a Spanish learner basically type answer rather than a native Spanish speaker. So but again, we were too late in the process to try and get another review of that. And we did have a committee of like 3 or 4 Spanish speakers, some native indigenous and some as a primary language. So I throw that out to them again. And it was mostly on the recall, the response answers, I guess, like the yes, no, however. I think that's really it for survey for me. Appreciate the people that volunteered and participated in that. And we'll move over to marketing, which I know had some challenges. Judy, I don't know if you're able to do the marketing one, because you end up having kind of take that on.
Yeah, so marketing committee next year would be great to have a motivated chair to spearhead that. I mean, we do have a lot of graphics from this year now that we can use. I feel like marketing kind of encompasses recruiting usually, and it's hard to get into that, but this year I did what I could in terms of reaching out to groups in the community. I was really hoping that one of those like Rotary or like Rotaract or one of those could respond and help, or someone from like USF, but we didn't really see that kind of participation. I didn't really, other than timing, I didn't see that many concerns with marketing this year. It's mainly the recruiting portion that I would definitely like to get ahead of next year and identify some larger groups that would like to volunteer, or people that have networks or something that we could reach out to way ahead of Pitt, and get it on their radar, because the bigger groups are harder to schedule with. So if we have our date, we can reach out to big groups that do large volunteer efforts and then hit them back up when the time comes.
I think also, like the quote I pulled, was actually from marketing from another community. I think there's another one later on. And they had some beautiful graphics and storytelling that they did leading up to, and the day of, they were actively, posting and making comments on kind of how their event was going, which obviously pulls on some different kind of donors and different kind of providers and outreach. And so I thought it was really neat. There's a lot of great examples. Marketing is not my forte, so whoever wants to participate in that, happy to send things. The other thing that kind of came out big this year was kind of the fundraising that needed to happen. And so I don't know if that will stay in the marketing house, or how we need to potentially approach that next year, primarily for incentives, but any other sort of specific marketing or advertising, I think would fall into kind of some of that fundraising.
Yeah, I honestly would say fundraising and or recruiting should be their own subcommittee. I mean, I definitely don't think it should be marketing, fundraising, and recruiting all in one, so that's something I guess the committee can look at for next year, but that would be a lot for one committee to take on.
I want to give a shout out to TV, because TV had a personal connection that actually did a majority of the donation. So that she was able to get through her network. So we all have networks for whether it be recruiting or for fundraising or any of that. So thank you, TV.
Yeah, and that was a business, not like a friend or
Yes.
family. They didn't just donate. It was a friend that works for a company that I knew had a lot of money. So, I mean, we all have some of those, like, you just have to ask them, because I tried to do the external request, like just go online and apply, but a lot of these bigger companies, they do the givebacks through their employees. So if you can get an employee on the inside and they submit internally, like through their intranet or whatever they're using, it carries a lot more weight for sure. But marketing, advertising, all of that, I honestly feel like we should start before August, but something else we can look at.
All right. Deployment, did Dama end up joining us? I don't think she did.
No, I don't think so.
No. All right, anyone that participated in this committee, I think the thing that was most challenging about deployment this year is that the subcommittee lead, there were major changes ended up happening with HUD, and it ended up redirecting BOLI and how they were able to staff and be available for this committee. And so I think that definitely impacted kind of the home stretch of buttoning up deployment. Damo was being pulled in too many directions with her own agency, and because her agency obviously is the priority, and trying to figure out how to secure and stable housing for the individuals she had across all her programs. So I think that was the biggest thing I observed as an outsider. But she did an incredible job pulling it back together in January and getting us a list that we were able to move forward on. And thank you to all the members that gave feedback on that. Anything else for deployment?
I did have one feedback comment saying that there was overlap. It was something about overlap. Overlap of shift territories leads to duplicate interviews, is what someone mentioned. So talking about the deployment zones, and for example, S1 deployment zone had overlap blocks of St. Pete with S2. I don't know if those are the right zones, but that's just an example. And maybe Tony can speak on that a little more when he gets to his data review, because he did a lot of work on that mapping.
Yeah, I think that mapping, the visualization is going to be huge for deployment next year. But I do think it's going to need more people. I think that was very evident to Dama this year, and she's kind of said that the past few years, to be honest. And I know she's not here to speak for herself, but she kind of acquired that from the person before her who did it at BOLI, and it requires more help than I think what that committee has been able to have, or what they were able to do this past couple of years. All right. Next.
So, I'm sorry, Dominique, I have my hand raised, but for deployment, let's see, we all give our different zones, but I do think that we are not involving in I don't know how we do it, so I hate to give a problem and don't really have an answer to that. But I don't know that we're involving all the right people for the different areas, right? So if we in St. Pete, it's only as good as the areas that I know my team and I are going out to, right? But there are street outreach teams in other areas that we're probably not touching, and they are touching people in those areas. So I guess I'm a little lost, and I've been on deployment for years. And one thing that I can do, I will do differently next year is the year before I kind of did co-chair with Dama, and that seemed to help. And I feel bad that I didn't do it this year, because then here's this major thing that she needed to tackle that she couldn't. But I'm wondering if on the HLA side, if there isn't an ability to give us some insight on where people should be deployed as well, based off the information that they're getting in. Because we are always, like, this year was very different. We had cold night shelters, but we've had extremely cold nights before. There were 8 people. I don't even know if there were 8 people in front of St. Vincent de Paul. And I've been out there every single night for the last 8 years, even in the pouring rain. There's at least 40 people in front of St. Vincent de Paul at that time of morning. But this year there was, I think Shawnice was there early in the morning. There was maybe 4 or 5 when I drove by there. So I'm wondering if there isn't some opportunity to figure out, like, oh, it is cold night shelter. Do we really need to still deploy to this place? Or could we call St. Vincent de Paul and say they're not letting anybody in their courtyard when it's a cold night shelter, so we don't need to go here. We need to go to a different place. And I'm wondering if HLA can help us on where that different place might be, based off of I don't know what information they may have that might be able to help us with that.
I'm not sure I understand. So like if it was a cold night shelter, which was activated that day and potential the day before, and then and so it brings back this idea that I feel like there should be a workflow of some sort, just assuming that there may be a cold night shelter. So that then it's like because I know the day before pit, we're like reaching out to all the shelters and stuff. So having this added to as another layer would be, yeah, now we know and we can like prepare for that. That's a good point. I'm curious how much, I know that HLA, like the HMIS team, and we have some staff who have worked deployment before, back before committee and was paper and all that. And I'm curious about the work that was done on that side and how it was received. That's another area that I'm going to follow up on more with my team, but would also welcome feedback there too.
I think it'd be helpful just making sure the right people are either being outreached to by this committee, by the deployment committee. I don't think HLA is the sole, right, sole source. I think we did like about some outreach, like sheriff, like, hey, where in Palm Harbor, Oldsmar should we be going? Because if you look at the heat map on the next couple slides, there's a big old gap between Tarpon and North Clearwater. So where should they be going? Or do we just continue to rely on the officer that's more flexible with their space? Or once someone's gone to their primary location, hey, now you can just have secondary locations, which I think that is kind of what Helen was inferring. But I know there's locations that I have said, I really should be going here, and I didn't see them on the list again. I didn't actually bring it from like a year or 2 ago. I'm like, why didn't they go to that park still? But there's a lot of source information coming in, and that's what I was saying. It is a lot of ask for one person to pull all that together. That's doing this in addition to their regular duties. They're really working on the team there. And then I hopefully, if Jane was able to join us in the fall, something that she wanted to do, and again, things changed, is having some of these kind of events. She was talking like Fergs, I was considering an event, but in the past, I know Dream Center has done an event at one of the parks. We're gonna get into youth outreach, they did events, but is there events or like targeted activities that we could do to also try and get the word out and kind of pull people in and offer resources, not just a survey and a gift card. Training, anything else on employment? Sorry. The natural science. Training, so Blossom or April?
I think training committee went well. We had a lot of people on there. We got enough of the trainings done. I think it's just about ensuring that I guess we're going through the list of who's been trained, who's been registered. I definitely think we should probably do more of the first time people in person. So they can be able to stop and go with the video. And see it in person. I feel like that was a little bit better when I did the in-person training. Other than that, I think it went well. I didn't really have too many issues. Blossom?
Yeah, I think it went well. I know we cut out some things this year to simplify. Like, and now of course I'm forgetting, but like repeat people could just watch the video and take the survey. And I think at the end, TV, you did allow some of that, which was good to beef up volunteers. But because we cut out some things to simplify, maybe we could then add next year, just like you said, April, like a new person training, maybe one of those, and then do the rest as we always have, like our senior volunteers come to the other trainings, but offer one slot for new volunteers, or two, to give some time options. So we can definitely keep that in mind for next year. But yeah, we had a lot of people volunteer to train. It was nice because it ended up where people only had to give one or two trainings. So that was good. And we did have both in person and virtual, but if we needed to add one in person, we could definitely do one more in person. We could definitely do that. What about, I invited some of the people who weren't necessarily on the planning committee, but did the trainings. Anyone of that group have feedback? Those of you that took the trainer and then did the training, anything we could change, improve, anything that went well? All right, thank you.
The only thing I would say is, if you guys are willing to do it again next year, or whoever's gonna take on this subcommittee in the fall, maybe looking more into the satisfaction surveys. You said 170 something, I think you said. That's a lot, that's a pretty good number of feedback. But if they identified, I heard that trainers were very different, and some were better and some were more challenging. So maybe looking at some of that feedback, or if you guys have already received that, whether that means additional coaching or training, or more strategic in our recruitment of trainers. But no two trainers are the same. Is that Dawn?
Hello, Angela and I did the virtual training. I believe we did two. And the first one was a little chaotic because we had some technical difficulties, which TV was able to help us with. But I think next year would be better prepared for them because we have a better idea what to expect. Angela did want me to report that, again, she is very much in favor of doing more in-person trainings. So I'll put that out there for your consideration. But we are out there and volunteering for next year as well.
Thank you, Dawn.
You're welcome.
Thank you all that helped that committee. I had never served on that subcommittee. It was a heavy lift, so thank everyone who helped and jumped in and trained, and April for being my partner in crime. Thank you guys.
Hey, Blossom and April and TV, just a real quick shout out. These three are rock stars. And Blossom's not lying, it is a heavy lifting subcommittee. And I just want to let the group know that having witnessed it, that they did a fantastic job, worked really well as a team, kept things organized and contained. TV made herself more than available for everyone who needed it for those individual trainings. She jumped on some of them when there were some technical difficulties and all of that. She was really helpful in the training that I helped participate in and give. So I just want to quick let everybody know that that was the work that was done behind the scenes, and that it is not an easy job. However, that being said, it's a very important job. So any of you who want to come back in the fall and help, hey, make sure you sign up.
Thank you. I'll do youth. So Chuck and Tom were not able to join today, so they sent me some notes. So youth chose to, go back to events. They did host an event at Family Resources as well as Ready for Life. They did repeat that they did have low turnouts at both. However, they were still very grateful for the opportunity. They ended up having 12 subcommittee members from 9 different organizations, many who had not participated in PIT before. They were at those sites and ended up traditionally deploying with us. The Pinellas County School Board participated, and they actually were able to give us a hotel site. Well, they could give us intersections where large pickups of heat kids were happening, basically. So they couldn't tell us, names or hotels, but that was shared with deployment to try and capture some of those that maybe couch surfing or maybe unhoused in those areas. So grateful for that. They jumped right in on that. And so overall positive. The only other thing, yeah, they are interested in continuing it, even though they had low turnout, and just seeing how they can improve. And pivot on that. I believe he sent the invite today to his group too, so I didn't see anyone though online from it. No. All right, and first responders. I know you're not technically a committee, but you definitely are kind of your own group, so I wanted to keep you on here under the review section, and their feedback was as participating and kind of the convener.
I think the training went pretty well, aside from, the people not being already registered or signed in with it. I mean, that's gonna happen. That's, I sent out the email, sent out the flyer. I mean, people, the cops, they're gonna show up and try to do it on site. And as far as like on the back end, like TV said, we had some issues on the back end, that, morning of, but we were able to work through it. So, my team got all our surveys, the surveys that we completed in, so. That was the only hiccup that we had.
Yeah, I would say the same for the sheriff's office. Is very simple. The hiccup, obviously, in the morning, I think we might have lost 1 or 2 because we didn't save it to draft. But once it came back online, they automatically submitted, so that was great.
Yeah.
So they didn't have to go back in and start resubmitting. But like I said, cold weather shelters at the time. Since I haven't done this in probably 10 years or more. It's that made it a little bit more convenient, I think, just for my guys, because I think we were all able to get 5 or 6 guys each, because everybody was just piled up and they weren't kicking anybody out. They were maintaining because it was just so cold up. So
How many of you guys responded? Was that the Northwest Church or whatever? Do you know how many ended up responding there? I thought it was John Morgan and the officer that he's normally. He reported 1 officer. I don't know if there's more.
over at the Northwest, which one's at the?
All night, kind of like Kansas City, edge of Kansas City.
Okay, so I was over there. I think I was there and I got like 6 guys right off the bat.
Now, how many of you got volunteers were there? Like, of the officers, do you remember?
I would say probably five,
Okay.
4 or 5 of us were over there, yeah.
Yeah, and that draft thing, I think everyone that was in draft got saved. They looked at all of the data. I don't think there was really any significant impact except for like what you said, those who might have deleted those surveys. We were able to catch it. Once we knew about it, we figured it out, but we didn't know about it at first. All right. And thank you for hosting the training. I think the communication went well and all that, so thank you for putting out the thing. All right, data review. You still on, Tony?
Yes, I am. I'm here. Hello?
You can go, next slide.
Can everybody hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. So the preliminary numbers, you saw a few people that were at deployment sites, whether you were a deployment manager or TA, may have seen this dashboard that you're seeing now. This is the progress dashboard. You can see there that it says 1144. Above it, it says surveys conducted. That's kind of a bit of a misnomer. That's encounters. So any logged encounters. So if you're in the app and you're sitting there typing in and the person refuses to finish and you go ahead and hit submit, that's going to count in these numbers. So if the person refuses, person breaks off, has to go on their bus or whatever. If you submit it, it's going to show up in these counts. So this 1144 is more encounters than you would say surveys. As far as surveys that were actually submitted, and again, these are preliminary numbers, they haven't been cleaned, haven't even taken a look at this data, in earnest yet, but we're at about 966. Right, so that's about where we're at. Last year we had a little bit more than that. I can't remember the exact number. I think it was around 980 is what we had out of the 1,114 encounters that we had in 2025. Turned out to be submitted. Something was submitted, whether that was a completed survey, a duplicate, what have you. Here we had about 966 actual submissions out of those 1144. And currently, as you can see there, that is the heat map. That gives you an idea of where most of those encounters happened. And as you can see, most of them did happen in South County or St. Petersburg. Now, as I did hear a little bit of conversation about volunteers, I went ahead and took a quick look at the 231 volunteers that had actually been checked in. We had 215 people submit something, whether that was a survey or a refusal or something along those lines. We had about 215 people do that. So it was a pretty good percentage of people actually were using the app and hit submission. Now, keep in mind that 231 may not include the people that were doing paper surveys. So there are a few paper surveys that were done in there. I know myself, TV, Chloe Bear were people that were doing or entering some of those paper surveys. So again, that those numbers are a little bit liquid. I would say plus minus 10 people when we're looking at the 231, we're looking at the 215, those kinds of things. So. And that's it as far as preliminary numbers. Does anybody have any questions?
I should have asked you this ahead of time so you were ready. Is someone able to talk about kind of the timeline for the report and what that's going to look like for the HLA?
That really has to do with the HEP. I'm sorry, not HEP, excuse me, HUD. HUD submission. We do not provide that data to our data analyst until we do the HUD submission. So once the submission is completed, that's when that report really begins in earnest. We did receive the data last week, late last week. We got it on Thursday. So we are going to start cleaning now. But as far as final submission, I don't know when the report will be completed. I don't know what kind of timeline we're looking at there. I think I would defer to Sherry as far as the situation with the data analyst who will be completing the report this year.
Mhm. Yes, and thank you, Tony. So, and that is dependent on HUD actually opening up a portal. Is that right, Tony?
Yes, that's the problem that we had last year on the
Last year they were
delay.
late in opening up yeah,
Correct.
the reports, yeah.
Right. And last year it took us a little bit longer to get the opportunity to even submit.
Yeah.
So that did cause a little bit of a delay from years past. Although I believe we still ended up submitting the report around the same time.
And then this year we do have the data earlier, like than in the past, right?
Yes, we've got it a couple weeks earlier than we have in the past.
Okay. Okay,
So
and then,
that ought to hopefully speed things up, but still have to wait until HUD allows the submission, and then we get the final submission before we even got to the point where we would be giving that data to the data analyst and to DAPO to create the dashboard that we put up on the COC's website.
well, and as far as the PIT report that's created separate from HUD submission or in addition to all of that, I've already met with Freeman. We are waiting for this data to be actually available. We were waiting till after PIT to get back together to figure out what would be the best setup for moving forward. But we are in touch. Contract's going to be signed for his helping to as a consultant to author this report, and it'll look very similar to what we did last year. We're looking at areas though to pull away. The report just keeps growing, and so I've been really cautioning that. Just like the survey, instead of getting longer and longer, we need to be tighter and tighter, and making sure that we're really addressing what folks need to know from this and also the funders who pay for that report as well. And so that's what we're going to be focusing on. And hopefully the target date is still going to be around that July board meeting. The other thing for the final report to be shared, the other thing is that something that we did this last spring when Freeman came on is that we had some focus groups where board members and others, anyone could really meet with him in small groups and discuss any areas that they may have questions about from previous reports, what they'd like to see in the report. And that's going to happen again because it seemed to help us move forward without a lot of questions during the reporting process and wondering like what these data sets mean and what is this population, that sort of thing. So it helped him actually develop a report that was more user friendly.
All right. I see, Helen, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Tony, I was just wondering, so if you go back to the heat map, and I know we've asked this question before, although I can't remember the answer, so it's a me thing. Are most Are we able to determine how many people are volunteering for South County versus North County? Like, I know we don't make that like we don't tell people where they can volunteer or where they're going to go, right? They determine where they're going to be deployed from. But I'm interested to know, like, are most happening in St. Pete because that's where most of the volunteers are deploying from is St. Pete, and that's what they're picking. And we have all of our deployment locations. Does that make sense? Like, can we tell how many volunteers have in South County are being deployed in St. Petersburg versus other areas of the county?
A good question. We do have the ability to look at who was assigned to which county, but as far as the surveys themselves, we'll be able to tell which deployment zone that they did the survey in, whether that be inside of the deployment zone or outside of the deployment zone. We'll be able to see how many people were in those areas as far as doing surveys, but as far as assigned as opposed to actually completing surveys in those areas, I don't know if we'll actually have true data. We will be able to see who was assigned there. We already have that information in our volunteer deployment data. But what we did find out very quickly last year when we were looking at deployment data was that a lot of people who were assigned to certain counties, whether that be north, south, or mid county, actually completed surveys outside of that area. And we also know that we did have situations, at least at HEP where I was, where we had volunteers that actually showed up that weren't supposed to be in North County. They were actually supposed to be in South County or Mid County. And they showed up to North County because they showed up with the people that they wanted to go out on deployment with. So, of course, we tried to accommodate as best as we possibly could. And I'm sure that we weren't the only ones who had situations like that. So, again, it would be kind of difficult. We can get, a general idea of how many people we're actually surveying in South County or Mid County or North County. Just don't know about actually deployed from those counties. That might be a little more difficult. And then assigned as opposed to deployed.
I was gonna say, as far as assignments go, that'd be more TV's area, right?
Right. Correct.
Well, let me just tell you what I'm getting at. Twofold. One, we know that as of last year anyway, 53% of the population unhoused is showing in St. Petersburg. But I'm getting at, is that because we have more volunteers in St. Petersburg, right? We're deploying to more places in St. Petersburg, and we're missing places in other areas, is what I'm getting to. Trying to figure out, like, yes, people are in St. Petersburg and we don't want to miss them, but are we missing people in other places? And it makes me ask myself the question, do we need to kind of assign? It goes back to Dominique's point, like, do we need to do some assignment in different areas? That's kind of what I'm getting towards.
Exactly. I had the same question. And so with that, there were people who were assigned to areas that was not their first choice. And so I think that TV would be able to talk about like the methodology around that. And if she is, I can't see her on the screen. But because that has been a question, if not having very much, like in Tarpon Springs, I know that there is a very big community, a population up here that may be undercounted for that reason. Could be because people are not willing to come up, or some other reason. But I know that most of the HLA volunteers, many of them are, staff who were assigned sections. We didn't get our first choice, and it was based on where need was identified for deployment.
Yeah, so Helen, you're absolutely right. I think this has been a trend with Pitt over the last at least 4 years that I've been here, that we haven't really reached North County as much as we want to, which is a question that I think was kind of addressed in the beginning, saying maybe we can reach out to the municipalities a little better. Palm Harbor, Dunedin, even Safety Harbor, reaching out to street outreach programs or individuals and also law enforcement officers to get a better idea, just like we do down in St. Pete. Like you said, you were on the deployment committee at one point. It would be great to have someone like in street outreach from Palm Harbor on our deployment committee, or even just to get some feedback to know where better we can deploy in North County. So when that was mentioned, I made note of it for me personally to reach out just to see what's going on. This is my first year doing assignments, of course. And the feedback that I received, like Sherry mentioned, is that individuals did not want to be assigned where they did not prefer to go. I mean, with the lack of volunteers already, we were trying to assign folks during their same time slot, but in a different part of the county in order to fill the need at HEP specifically. And they were not really willing for the most part. So this year, for sure, 100%, South County had way more volunteers deploy than HEP did. And I think it's a trend from the years past, but I can't say for sure on that. But I know our surveys trend that way too, where we're lacking in North County. So it's not for lack of trying. We're assigning up there. We have deployment sites and zones, but we can reach out to more local players in North County and try and get them involved.
No, I don't think it is from lack of trying at all. TV, please don't take it. I hope that you're not taking it that way. I really am trying to get to the point of, right, we give these numbers to our elected and to everyone, and it's 53% of homelessness are in St. Petersburg. 53% of homelessness that have been surveyed are in St. Petersburg, right? Is the true. And the reason for that is because City of St. Pete and other areas, right, have had 30 volunteers sign up. And of course, they're going to want to be assigned in the area. Like, I wouldn't expect my outreach team to go to another area because they know their people here and their people are going to talk to them here. I'm not sending them up to Clearwater or to Palm Harbor to go look for people that they do not know and or might not speak to them. So it makes sense. And so I just need to be able to tell the story. Like, it's not like we have an abundance of people here centered in St. Petersburg. It is just that this is where the volunteers are. And because we are on deployment, because I'm on deployment and I oversee our street outreach team, I can say, hey, I know these are hotspots. And so this is where we need to be at.
Exactly.
But it also helps to know that we are missing places that people need to deploy to. And so we can try to figure out if people have contacts in those areas, how we get them to volunteer.
Yeah, I'll share exactly, Helen. So whenever I would present on the pit report data from last year at various places, including Tarpon Springs, their board of commissioners, and Gulfport, and trying to get Gulfport's St. Pete area, but trying to get more and more volunteers and buy-in and get people involved in the COC in general. I'm very careful because these data, again, based on a census, based on how many surveys were completed, does not necessarily equal the number of people who are experiencing houselessness there. And so it can be misinterpreted pretty easily, or it can skew. Yeah, so it shouldn't be like this is the hard number of folks who that just can't be. It has to be reiterated. This is a point in time census. It is dependent on it's going to be easier, or we're going to have an easier time. There's a lot more connections made in South County than there is in North County when it comes to a lot of different factors. So that is important as part of the story, to share some of the.
And thank you. And I was going to say one of the other factors that you may want to look at is how many providers that you have for homeless services within those areas. You know, if you have the majority of the providers in South County, then you're going to have more people staying in South County to be able to access those providers. Much more so than maybe something like Tarpon Springs, which only has the Shepherd Center, or Dunedin, which I don't know of any providers. At least we don't have any in HMIS that are providing services within the Dunedin area or in Safe Harbor. And as you can see, when you look at that heat map, there's a big gap there between Palm Harbor, Dunedin, Safety Harbor. That whole area isn't touched at all. We've got nothing. I mean, we even had a deployment zone of 580 from, basically Gulf to Bay, from the Gulf all the way to the bridge. And we had no surveys along 580 at all. At least from this heat map, we don't see a single one. So was that because nobody drove all the way down from coast to coast, from the Gulf to the Bay, or was it that nobody got, no one was actually seen out there? I wouldn't think that you wouldn't see anyone along such a large stretch of road.
Nick?
David. So from the sheriff's office standpoint, we do homeless outreach twice a month, typically North County. So that whole stretch that's up there. One, you're going to have an issue because you have all the construction on US 19, and that was the primary spots prior to the construction. The other issue is that they're very consistent on where they stay, North County. Tarpon obviously does have some of their normal spots, which is easy for us to work with Tarpon PD and their outreach to try to locate them. But a lot of them, speaking with them, usually go to Pasco County. And they come down temporarily to try to make it a different scene. But they usually don't, that area is not really hit a lot with a lot of homeless. It's very spotty.
And I think that's it. I think it's kind of like the return on investment. Like if I'm sending a group of 4 people to a park, you want them, is someone going to be at that park? Because we always get that feedback. There was no surveys. There's nobody to survey. Like, I don't know how many you thought you were gonna do, but like 1 to 3 surveys is pretty good, for most volunteers. Also, I mean, I know encampment Sarna is plentiful, but that's also where there's gonna be more encampments, and we don't wanna send a volunteer into there. So like, I'm in that blank spot now, and I see trails off 19, and I
And
see
we get
them.
those trails frequently.
Yeah, I know,
And there's
I know.
really not a lot.
We're not
There's-
gonna
I
send.
can tell you, I know one guy who's back there consistently.
Yeah.
And we interview him every time, only because he's the only one and he kicks everybody else out of it.
Yeah, and like he'll report out that he goes like to Boot Ranch, and most of those people that are on the corners are actually housed. So they're collecting rather than being unhoused. So that's again part of that. Where do we send people? How do we send them? And this is where we rely and are so grateful for the law enforcement to cover those areas. We had some of the beach communities covered exclusively because of sheriff and Treasure Island. So we're doing that. Not a lot out there though. We didn't really see that many. Gulfport, we did not end up participating, but we did send outreach down there. But we did not get Gulfport. I think she was out sick. Is that what we ended up hearing back? I think person was out for some reason and so was not trained or did not deploy it.
I think that we do have a little bit of color down there in Gulfport. There's not a whole lot there, but there's at least one little dot. If you can see right next to where it says Gulfport, right there on the coast, there is a couple of. Looks like we got a couple of.
If it can be of any assistance, I know the Gulfport outreach officer down there. That could be of any assistance.
Yeah, for next year for sure. It was Elijah, the outreach person, who did those 2 little dots that you're seeing in Gulfport. So, but he went up to all the cars, he knows the people, and a lot of people did not want to participate, so.
Yeah, seem awful wide around the gateway and Tyrone Mall area. And both of those areas are getting a growing number of homeless.
Good feedback too for deployment. And this really, I'm trying to be conscious of time, because I thought we'd be out of here a little earlier, but look at us going. Any other feedback on data? So report in July, hopefully, of course, you're gonna use the school data and sheriff data or jail data that will be cleaned in the same way or reviewed in the same way. All right. So we're actually gonna get into a little bit, we heard a little bit of kudos, but we do have about 10 minutes left of this meeting, so I wanna lean back into the kudos and the recognitions. On the next slide are some of the awards that were selected last year, as well as the award recipient. I don't even have to look at the final numbers, but I know City of St. Pete was the volunteer champion again. If we're gonna keep that same award, which we totally should. But St. Pete, you guys blew us out of the water this year. I don't know what the final deployed is. Maybe I should wait for that. So we recognize the City of St. Pete and Helen for recruiting the volunteer champion. Point in time champion was identified as a CoC board member who was heavily involved. Last year that was identified as Kevin Marone with Foley Centers. Survey champion was Kathy Ham, who completed the most surveys. She again completed the most surveys this year. I think it was 30 something. 33 volunteers. So that's the Clearwater Outreach. I think she kind of does like a 12-hour shift, does whatever she wants. Make sure she picks all the people up. And then the training champion was identified as Victoria Kelly as being really the champion of point in time for the HLA, but for all her efforts, because she was literally in every video via recording. So those were the awards that were offered up last year and was given. And I want to hear, I know we're trying on time, but hear from you all on what any award recommendations or considerations and who we potentially want to identify for those awards. And then I think they'll be given out at a future CoC meeting is how these ones were awarded. So
I'll start with Dapo, who I know doesn't come to these meetings, but heavy player in all of Pitt. He does the programming and any of the technical stuff for ArcGIS and the Pitt Hub, the registration database. Like, he does all of that. He creates it, he manages it, he helps me understand it, he helps the TAs understand it, pushing everyone through, like helping with data collection on the back end. This being my first year, I mean, lots of support all around. Thank you to everyone on my team, but Doppo is probably like the biggest mentor when it comes to PIC. And this year he was a little more involved with our side of things, not just the back end technology stuff, which he mentioned really appreciating. And he really enjoyed being more connected to the TAs on HLA's team. But he should get something large.
Something large. Any idea on the award title or, because I totally concur.
I can think on it and get back to you,
Yeah.
but definitely something.
So Dapo was asked to help with the surveying 3 years ago, I think. I think this is our third year that we've used the PIP, survey 1, 2, 3. Hey, can you do the HLA asked the county, hey, can we use your platform and can you guys build the survey? And he's with our BTS IT development, and he's like, yeah, I can do that and all these other things, and he always is available. And last year his wife had a baby through it all, and he did all of that, and this year he was through the whole thing. So I totally agree. I know he's more of like a secret, like back on the back end,
So
so
then just use it like pit behind the scene
yeah.
supporter.
Behind
Award.
the scenes superstar or
Yeah.
unsung hero.
There you go, right
There
there.
you go. Okay. Say puppet master. So kind of behind the scenes award, I like that idea. Any other shout outs or recommendations for awards? I mean, I'll do it again. The point in time volunteer champion is obviously Helen Rhymes and her team with City of St. Pete, if we want to continue with that award. A little bitter. Great job, Helen.
Don't be. Don't be, Dominique. I actually put it in our email, just so you know. Like, we're in a nice, friendly battle with the county.
Can we do a big group one for those that pivoted the morning of cold night shelters?
Yeah.
They got up extra early. And I know we have the list from your assignment email, so they can all get a recognition.
What do you want to call that? Most willing participant? No, I can't tell.
Award.
Early Bird Award.
Oh, yeah, good.
There we go. Early Bird Award for those who pivoted. Included some officers as well. Thank you both for your teams are out there early. Cold nights. Once you knew where to go, like COVID. He was waiting outside while everyone's doing surveys. All right, any other considerations? All right. We'll leave it with these three. I don't know if we really need, like, do we need to, I guess we probably need to officially vote on them, but I don't know if we need a title. If we need to be that formal, or we've just kind of acknowledged three people or groups, and then we can come up with official titles. I'm good with that. For the sake of a meeting though, does anybody want to give any recommendation? For those awards or add anything else? So I'm looking for a motion on awarding for recruitment champion, St. Pete, Helen, kind of behind the scenes with Oladaba satire gun, and what was the other one? Oh, the early birds groups.
So you're looking for a motion to add the additional awards?
Those are right now, those are the awards on the table. So those are the three identified awards and recipients.
So are we not keeping the pit champion, the survey champion? So are we keeping what we have and then adding the other two?
It's up to you all. What do you guys want? What are you looking for? What do you want? We didn't memorialize these as like the mandatory awards. So we want to identify additional recipients or if we want to identify new awards.
I mean, I guess if you don't keep what you already have, then what are you're not really, I don't know that you have to give the same awards every year, but to me, it feels like, okay, somebody has something to work towards if you're given the same awards every year. So there's a pit training champion, person who led the most training sessions. I don't know, because I only went to one training session, but maybe there's somebody that did that. We know that TV was in all the videos. So, or maybe there was someone on the training committee that did the most trainings. I don't know what that looks like, but survey champion, I think keeping these and adding the other ones feels right.
Okay. So let's through these. I don't know who the CRC board member that was most involved, so I'll wait if anybody has feedback on that, but the survey champion.
Kathleen, the chair?
It'd be Kathleen.
Kathleen, yeah, would be the chair. I feel like she was at quite a few of our meetings.
Yeah,
and
she was part of and committee meetings or subcommittee, and then and cold night shelter and volunteering. Yeah.
The COC board person.
That is how it's currently. That's how it's currently labeled. So keeping that same label with the COC HLE board member most involved, Kathleen, that makes absolute sense.
Mm-hmm.
Recommendation for that? Okay.
Are you asking, is that the recommendation? To me, that would be my recommendation. So if you're looking for something formal, I'm making a recommendation on that. That Kathleen be that person.
Yeah, that's the only recommendation on the table, so I was gonna try and lump them all together still. We need to make up one individually. The next is the point in time survey champion. So again, that'd be Kathy Ham as most surveys completed. There's not really a contest to that because it's most, so she was number one, I think by a good 5 or 10. And so that would be the recommendation. And then for the training champion, I believe it is TV because she offered TA. She was the second or third person on multiple trainings. I don't know, April or Blossom, if there's anything different.
No, I don't know. I'm down with whatever we pick.
I like the way you think. Okay.
I'm about there.
So we have 4 and then the 2 additional, so 6 identified awards for 2026.
So I'd make a motion that Blossom has her thumb up, so that TV must be her recommendation. So make a motion that we accept the 6 awards, right? 4, 5, 6, and those that were recommended for the award. There you go.
Perfect. Anybody want to second that?
I'm second.
Thank you. All right. So we're at time, but if we can try and stay on for like 5 more minutes. This was brought up earlier on, but this committee does stop meeting after February and reconvenes in August to start planning. Things like obviously the analysis and all of that continue happening, but the committee itself does stop. But we talked about things like marketing, how early does that start? Recruitment, deployment, even survey, the app, all of that can actually occur outside of this kind of schedule. Were there any recommendations outside of the current identified kind of schedule of August to February? Currently, we are still scheduled for the meeting kickoff on August 4th, 9:30, 11 hybrid here at this office. I did notice there is still like an outstanding floating meeting that's year round on this. It might be from Megan. Let me look real quick.
Yeah, that's gonna be canceled.
Yeah, it's from Megan. So, any discussion on changing this? Or is everyone good with continuing on from the August to February?
I think this is fine for now. I know me personally, I wanted to get with subcommittee chairs this year to just collect some feedback and some more information on how their process went this year so that I can next year hopefully provide like a very small guideline on what a chair can expect to be doing when they join a subcommittee. And then be able to provide like documents from the last pit so that they know what they're going to be using to update and all of that. Just think it would be easier turnover for chair collection. And then whatever work is done for recruiting and fundraising that happens before August, I think I'll just reach out informally to anyone to see if there's interest in participating in that ahead of the August meeting.
And HLA, of course, will be looking at some of those local grant programs that may be able to support that have their cutoffs before we were able to do that this year, like with Walmart.
Awesome. All right. Well, with that, we'll see you in August, I guess. If you're interested in continuing on as a participant or a member, getting clarification on what those two are as well, please reach out to TV and myself.
Wait, I lied. I'm so sorry, Dominique. But however, Dominique has been our chair for as far back as I can remember, y'all. And so I feel like, how many years has it been, Dominique?
2 or 3. Arrow did it.
Yeah, 3 years, but consistently for 3 years, like takes this on, and I don't know how else to say this, but nobody else is jumping to do this except for Dominique, and we appreciate you so much for that, Dominique. I feel like that there needs to be some acknowledgement there as well. Because this is a huge heavy lift, and Dominique takes this through starting in August, which is hurricane season, and y'all know how much the county does. And I was at a couple of years ago. That was huge to continue on, make sure that we still did this survey and do everything that needed to happen as it relates to people coming back from hurricanes. And I think Dominique worked the shelters and did this part of it. So I do feel like as a committee, we need to make sure that we acknowledge that. So however somebody wants to make that award, that's my motion. Whatever somebody wants to make that award say, like most amazing volunteer pit chair there is in the world. So
pit leadership.
Yes, there you go.
Champion.
Pit leadership, whatever we want to say, but we definitely need to acknowledge Dominique and everything that she does for our committee and for our community as a whole, but certainly on this committee.
You do pit VIP.
Pit VIP, I love it. Pit leadership VIP. So that's my motion, and I need a second there. I'm sorry, Dominique. You can't ask for the second.
I'll second. This is Blossom.
And we're all in agreement. So we will have 7 then. We'll have 7 awards then.
12-year-old, 6, 7. All right. Liz. My head. All right. Well, thank you very much. I don't know if at a future COC meeting, we'll make sure we acknowledge these publicly. I think they feel like they had to go to the board last year too, but you guys will usually can figure out the housekeeping on that. Thank you. So with that, I'll leave you with this quote. Working pit is humbling. Seeing how people are living outside reminds me of the strength and tenacity of the people who endure. So again, perspective. I'm glad I'm not out there sleeping, and I'm grateful for the house and the home I have and the community around me, and you guys are part of that community. So thank you everyone for volunteering. I hope to see you again in the fall. Maybe recruiting a chair, so keep your eyes open. Or a co-chair. We also have a baby. Miss Clara's having a baby in a couple of weeks, probably why she's not here. So congrats on your baby. Thanks everyone for an awesome job. And can we get it adjourned?
Adjourned.
Okay, I got a motion.
Motion, yes.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
What?
Yeah, I have insects.
Oh, I'm like, what are we looking at? Did something get a bug? Oh. You sent me the digital. I am having to have 2 or 3.